Despite being one of the strangest, silliest, and most over-the-top anime I've ever seen, Studio Trigger's Kill la Kill is simultaneously one of the richest in terms of themes. While one could criticize the show for not being as cohesive as it could be, there is so much substance to this story that it is impressive how organic it feels most of the time. While it is easy to see how some may come away from Kill la Kill thinking that it was a mindless spectacle with no real thought put into it, a small amount of retrospective reflection of the show proves this notion to be wholly untrue when it comes to its ideas. Kill la Kill does prioritize style, but there is also substance packed throughout, in a similar vein to its older brother, Gurren Lagann, even if it might not have the same quality in character progression and integrative focus. This video will take a look at some of the primary themes and symbolism of the work, but there are many concepts from the show that I will not touch here today. If you're interested in how the show uses religious imagery, sexuality, references, and wordplay, then I'd recommend checking out the analysis pieces that I've linked in the description, a couple of which I actually used as sources for this video. Now, a significant amount of major battles or story beats in Kill la Kill have some sort of dual meaning that refer back to at least one of its major themes. However, because most of the messages only fully reveal themselves by the end of the story, this is a concept that can easily be missed by those who finish the series and decide not to really think on it, or those who drop it midway. Note that I am not saying anything close to the notion that those who think Kill la Kill is bad just didn't get it. In fact, I can totally understand how someone with an expert knowledge of the themes of Kill la Kill could still dislike it, due to the narrative's prioritization of a myriad of well-presented ideas over a tightly focused narrative. Kill la Kill is something of a mishmash. The themes take precedence over almost every other story element, and I think that most would admit that. Due to this, it is understandable that someone who doesn't like that sort of approach would detest the show. However, it is in the execution, presentation, and clever integration of these themes that the series really shines. Now, while the relatively more subtle theme and character integration may not be completely obvious, the idea from Kill la Kill that is arguably the easiest to prize out is that of fate. A personal and grand battle to defeat fate for both humanity's sake and one's own. The skeleton of the plot is a demonstration of this in and of itself, but the story explores this in other ways as well. For instance, the blood-colored life fibers that permeate the show are a clear reference to the red thread of fate, as mentioned several times throughout the series by Mako. In Eastern folklore and culture, this thread is seen as one created by the gods that binds two soulmates together by destiny. It is often thought of with relation to marriage. However, it is also used as a real-life metaphor or at times a fictional device that simply means to display that people are at the mercy of the whims of the cosmic unknown. In Kill la Kill's case, the life fibers are the ultimate temptation, the purest source of pleasure, and a representation of the indulgence of giving in to fate. And the series is divided into those who seek to defy that fate, by and large the main cast of the show, and those who defend it, primarily Ragyo, Nui Harime, Rei, and the rest of Revox. The way these characters act is a blunt expression of their ideals. Through Ragyo's oppressive will to cover the people with clothes, and Harime's duty to stitch together and complete the Shinra Koketsu, their adherence to carrying out what they believe is destiny's will is clear. Additionally, Ragyo attempts to establish her dogma by founding the principle that nakedness is shame, and that only through wearing superior clothes can one rise up in the world. This then allows her family to control the market and socioeconomic state of the world, to form a societal hierarchy based entirely around the value of clothes, organically letting the tendrils of fate take root in the world due to humanity's need to climb the social ladder. It's a clever strategy, and one for which Ragyo only needed to provide the initial spark, before letting the dominoes fall as she intended, and by the first episode, this metaphorical plot element is well established. However, through those in Nudist Beach, and later basically everyone else in the series that isn't part of Revox, we have characters who recontextualize the idea of this low social status as a badge of honor, and show their resistance to this by simply not wearing clothes. But this link to fate in Kill la Kill is more personal, abstract, and specific than a simple fight for freedom from humanity, and this is shown through the kamui, the ultimate life fiber-enforced uniform things. In short, these uniforms, senketsu and junketsu, refer to a pseudo-familial obligation. It's about bloodlines, and the duty that can be thrust upon you without your consent simply because of what you were born into. Due to her father's dying wish, Ryuko is duty-bound to her fate to use Senketsu to fight until the bitter end to defeat the life fibers. Likewise, Satsuki is born into a regime that confines her to be a mouthpiece and representation of an ideology that she detests, so in a similar vein, she feels a duty to right these wrongs and strive against this. She hates her mother's oppressive, tyrannical ways, and doesn't buy into her ideas that the world must bend to the life fibers, so she naturally plans to oppose this. Consistent with the rest of the show's approach to theme communication, there is dual meaning in the words of her classic speech. While this seems at the beginning like pretty one-dimensional dictatorial speech, this is actually very nuanced foreshadowing of current and future events, and the context of the ending of Kill la Kill gives us this insight. Fear is freedom, meaning that the fear that Ragyo imposes on others is the spark that inspires Satsuki to free everything from her mother's rule. Subjugation is liberation, meaning that by allowing themselves to be dominated by Ragyo, Satsuki, her closest confidants, and Honuji Academy can quietly work undetected towards liberating themselves. And lastly, contradiction is truth, meaning two things. Firstly, that those who contradict or defy Ragyo's ideals are agents of truth, and secondly, this hints at the betrayal for truth that would soon come from Satsuki against her mother. This method of thinking is what keeps Satsuki going, fueling her journey of defying her pre-imposed familial role. It's a difficult task for her, represented by the fact that wearing the Junketsu is incredibly painful due to her incompatibility with it. This makes sense thematically. She hates the ideology that the Junketsu represents, so naturally the two reject each other. Whereas on the other hand, Senketsu being created for the purpose of defeating Ragyo's tyranny is completely in line with Ryuko's way of thinking, so they're a perfect match. However, despite the nearly diametric feelings Ryuko and Satsuki hold towards their roles, both are bound by duty and unable to truly be free. This is completely obvious when it comes to Satsuki, but with Ryuko, one might argue that she is experiencing a release and a sense of freedom through her quest. And while it is true that the nature of her journey lines up really well with her passion for fighting, her combative personality, and her need to grow in confidence and maturity, she is still bound by her role. There is still an obligation there that was not self-imposed, and Ryuko seeks to resolve this. She feels a sense of liberation through fighting with Senketsu, but she is not liberated, and she will never be until her fight is done. As pointed out in an analysis I'll link in the description, Senketsu dying at the end, while sad, is a representation of Ryuko now being liberated. Her, Mako, and Satsuki are free to finally live, and this is shown through them being able to walk through the streets wearing clothes of their choosing, not Kamui's or Goku uniforms. It's a quirky in-universe display of personal growth and an embrace of a world of possibilities, while also making sure to emphasize the importance of these connections that we make through telling us that Senketsu will never truly leave Ryuko and always be a part of her. In keeping with the topic of character design, obviously our protagonist's scissors are the ideal tool to cut and destroy the life fibers, but this is also directly linked to this thematic analogy. Ryuko, who with Satsuki is the person who does the most with regards to freeing the world from fate, is characterized by a weapon that is primarily used for cutting the red thread of fate, rendering it powerless. And all of this is characteristically pretty blatant for emphasis. It all comes down to humanity's everlasting longing for liberation and free will, and what it means to break through when something stifles that. And this is everywhere in Kill la Kill, coalescing in the final stand against Ragyo at the end. Here, Ragyo lightly touches on a concept that is minor but still significant. The idea of atonement, of paying for what our ancestors have done in full, and then some, despite not being at personal fault for it. It is a possibility that Ragyo was just twisting the truth here for effect, but if she does believe this to be the case, then this is important, because if she truly thinks that it is humanity's duty to pay for the sins of those before them, then she looks upon this as her duty, something she must do. It's a parallel that she shares with her daughters, and as they do, she goes through great lengths to carry this duty out. Notably though, the major difference here is that she welcomes and takes pleasure in her role, which is indicative of her attitude towards fate. The specifics behind exactly why Ragyo kickstarted her plan for world domination after discovering the life fibers is not entirely known, but it is insinuated to have something to do with a thirst for power and authority, and this is consistent with her characterization. She is a being who absolutely lusts for power and uses whatever means she has at her disposal, clothes, sex, words, to dominate others. And through this need for domination, she advocates for total uniform submission from the human race, pure control from the life fibers, which will lead to a world of collective, unvaried totality. However, our heroines have a problem with that. They welcome love and individualism, chaos and unpredictability. They make a stand for the human spirit. Ryuko and Satsuki endlessly aim to defy their mother's wish of turning the world into a homogeneous, dead planet ruled by life fibers. Due to her twisted beliefs and strange justifications, Ragyo cannot understand this, because it is almost programmed within her to just accept the will of the fibers as the way of the world and the true order, with no exceptions. This fight from our protagonists is something that just doesn't compute with Ragyo. Why struggle when you can give in to unspeakable pleasure through giving up your freedom? Well, liberation and expression, that's why. Ryuko wholeheartedly embraces her incomprehensible label, because if life was totally comprehensible all the time, what would be the fun in that? If achieving what you want requires you to be scantily clad, then so be it. Embrace it and wear it as a badge of honor, a source of pride, and a representation of your resolve, and use that to fuel something productive and fight for what you believe in. Kill La Kill embraces the weird individual differences in people throughout, and uses that through Ryuko's fight against her mother as an ideological rebuttal in battle form. But concurrently, this doesn't dismiss collectivism in any sense. The victory in the end is very much a team effort, working together towards a common goal. It's a demonstration that we all just want to be happy, and any disagreements can be overcome when something gets in the way of that. We can become something greater than the sum of our parts, and achieve some unbelievable things. There is one scene in episode 6 that is a pretty succinct encapsulation of Kill La Kill's theme communication. After forfeiting his vision to improve his combat skills, and after showing real skill against Ryuko, Sanagiyama is praised by Satsuki for his improvement.
目が潰れたおかげで逆に世界のすべてを感じられますよ。新しいきっかけを作ってくれたあなたにお礼を言いに来ただけです。
待て。約束だ。茶を振る舞おう。
いいえ、遠慮しときます。他の感覚が鋭くなりすぎて猫血だになっちまったんですよ。
Sanagiyama losing his vision has broadened his battle awareness, but it also helps show him that there's more to the world than one-dimensional hubris and subsequent reward. He now appreciates and seeks gratification in a different way compared to his past self. He realized how small his accomplishment was in the grand scheme of things, and how much he has to learn, and he feels that he has no right to celebrate with Satsuki as of now. It's a silly joke that keeps in tone with the rest of the series, but it also provides this deeper information through subtext. It's nothing huge or incredibly impressive, but examples of dual meaning and this type of presentation are rife throughout the story, from the tiny moments to the bombastic ones. This is easily one of Kill La Kill's biggest strengths, and a key contributor to why its themes are so impactful. and by extension, it's a simultaneously very subtle and very blunt element that allows the biggest and most resonant moments to hit their hardest. Be sure to let me know what you thought of Kill La Kill in the comments, and I'll catch you next time.